And I would say it like this, Chris. We forget the fact that there's a difference between principle and preference. Those are two different things. And you need to understand the aspect of those and how to use them. When you start to lose ethics, you start to lose a center, a core, everything becomes preference. Everything. And we don't want to talk about principle because that means I'm bound to something.
Welcome in to Menfolk Journeys, the podcast of great conversations with men. I'm your host, Chris Foster, and we're going to explore how we wear this beautiful and confusing mantle of manhood in the 21st century. Look, I get it. In public life, a lot of men are knuckleheads. But in private life, we can be thoughtful and we can be reflective if we have the right conversation, if we feel comfortable talking about our story. And we all have a great story to tell. And we can all learn from those stories. We can learn about who we've been, who we are, and who we want to be. And that's why we're going to have this conversation, so we can learn from other men just like us. And in this episode, we're going to talk with my new friend, Mark. Mark has figured out how to build a life based on conviction and purpose, and to create a moral and ethical foundation for his whole approach to living. It is an incredible advantage to have a moral principle that you can stick by and a foundation that you can live your life from. Might have learned it on the farm. He might create teachable moments for his kids. He had teachable moments from his father, and he talks about all of that and more. I really hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome in to Menfolk Journeys. Well, alrighty, Dr. Mark Teague, welcome in.
Good to be here, sir. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, Dr. Mark Teague. I'm 61 years old. I'm married to Melissa. She's absolutely my better half. I'm very, very fortunate to have her. We have 4 kids. We've been married almost 40 years. And Daniel's our oldest, and then Megan, and then, Andrew is our oldest, and then Megan, and then Daniel, and then Emily. You ask about place of birth, this will be interesting to your folks. I was born in a town called Muleshoe, Texas. Not many can claim that. That's my place of birth, up in the Panhandle, the high plains of Texas.
Wonderful. So you got 4 children. Firstly, congratulations, 40 years of marriage. I think that's marvelous.
Thank you.
And you grew up, I want to get more about that. But one of the things that I learned about you just from reading about you is that you actually did work on a farm.
Yes.
As a ranch hand. So
Yep.
I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I first learned of this poem by Paul Harvey. Yeah. Some might call it a poem, some might call it a speech. I first saw it, Mark, when I was looking at an ad. So I taught a branding class at UCSD Extension for many years. And part of the branding classes talk about, how brands communicate. And one of the brands was from Ram Truck. And it was this Paul Harvey-ish commercial. And it said, Paul Harvey, so God made a farmer. Now, I had never heard this before. But the Paul Harvey speech starts off and he says, "And on the 8th day, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a caretaker. So God made a farmer. God said, I need someone willing to get up before dawn, milk cows, work all day in the fields, milk cows again, eat supper, then go home and stay past midnight at a meeting at the school board. So God made a farmer."
Yep.
I need, and all this stuff. And
Yes.
it's actually a beautiful elegy to this idea of strength, of tenderness, of discipline, of accountability, of knowing that you're building something not just for yourself but for other people. Yes. It doesn't really matter what what you think of any of this stuff. The idea of it, though, to me is kind of like this image of the best of men, right? The best of men can can work 40 hours by noon Tuesday and still stop in the middle of, plowing fields to fix the broken leg of a meadowlark,
Yep.
shoe a horn
Yep.
by, hunk a tire scrap, all this stuff, all this sense of resilience and persistence, decency, of knowing that there's hard work involved to it. A, do you know the speech in the poem? And B, what do you think of it?
Oh, yes, I know it well. I think every rural American knows that speech. Is very famous. I've heard it many times. It has been a while, but very familiar with it. I would say this about that speech: it's very accurate. There isn't a
Mm.
single phrase in that that's not true and doesn't actually happen. And I applaud Paul Harvey for doing such a fine job of representing what it means to live off the land. It was it's a very well done speech. Very poignant, very relevant, and accurate as well.
So, what does it make you think of your vision of a man when you think of that speech? Is that an ideal that you have in your mind of who you want to be?
Well, it does, except one difference. Paul Harvey meant that to be a great platitude toward the hardworking farming heritage of America, and he did a great job with that. There's another aspect of it too that I think we need to bring in, and that is once you face nature and you make a living out of nature, it's very different than the modern corporate world for sure. And that's driven my vision. It drives the book that I wrote. And that's the fact that when you actually face nature every day, a couple things happen. Number one, you get stripped of any notion of the inherent kindness of nature. It's very harsh. It's very demanding. The work ethic out in the farm and ranch world is very straightforward. If you don't work, you don't eat. It's very simple, very clear. If you don't get your tasks done, your revenue will suffer within hours or days. I mean, right away. You get the feedback right away. Well, you step into the average corporate environment or business environment where folks work today, there's nothing straightforward. There's
Nothing.
nothing that even approaches that level of incentive and feedback that we grew up with, that built our nation for such a long time, built mankind for such a long time. So I like to speak commonly to that notion of incentive, that raw, visceral, straightforward incentive. We've lost what that means. And we've lost the second thing that nature teaches you that we've lost. That's the true idea of stewardship, what it means to take resources and actually take care of them. A lot of folks just get out of your apartment, get out of your four walls, go to a park, go climb a
Mhm.
mountain, go do something out in nature. You'll have a much better sense of the world that we live in, the earth that we occupy, and what it means to be a steward of those resources and to make something useful out of it. That has largely been lost because we don't face that every day. We face other pressures and we let our mindset be driven by those, but those things are not as fundamental as these other ideas and incentives are still there. We've just been able to look around them. Truth is, we're spoiled. We
Sure.
stand on the shoulders of great people who did very hard, very difficult things, and we think nothing about them. It's like
Yeah.
the whole world started in 1973 down at the mall. We forget the thousands of years of human history that came before that that allowed us to do the things we do today. We just ignore that. That's a grave mistake, a grave
Yeah.
mistake.
And there are so many things to unpack there about that, Mark. Can I call you Mark, or do you prefer Dr.
Please,
Teague?
please, yeah, go
I
ahead.
kind of
Either
thought
one is
Mark,
fine.
right? I kind of thought Mark.
Either one is fine.
That was
I
my
respond to
hunch.
anything. Just make sure you call me for dinner. That's the main
There you
thing.
go. Come on. So a couple of things I want to unpack about what you just said. Firstly, this concept of the visceral feedback and the
Yes,
immediacy that happens when you're on a farm or working within nature or working with animals, right?
yes,
This close connection between animal and mankind, where
yes,
um, I want to get to stewardship in a little bit, but I love what you said about the immediate responsiveness that we get. Human beings are animals in our core where we actually
yes.
respond to stimuli, right? We
Oh,
respond to
yes,
situations. We've been doing it for
yes.
forever.
Yep.
And when you're in a corporate world, it's true. and you're putting a marketing plan together, or you're putting a spreadsheet or accountant, business plan together, or pro forma together, you have no idea what this is going to be like tomorrow, today. 3 minutes from when you did it, you start writing something, and do you get feedback that day? No. Do you get feedback 2 months? Maybe. Right?
Yeah.
Do you get
Yes.
feedback from some strange, invisible corporate entity that looks at your, share price, every quarter, which is 4 months from now, and you make
Yep.
decisions that don't have an impact for 9 months? It's really hard for us to actually be more nimble in that lifestyle. And you're
Yes.
right. I think as a human, I think we lose that because we lose a sense of instinct. We lose a sense of building our brain in the moment to respond to threat or changing situations. I have to
Yes.
believe that in a farm environment where you truly have no control over the weather, you truly
Yep.
have no control over disease that happens to animals, you truly have no
Yes.
control over mishap that will happen naturally if you have a lot of animal or cattle or the like, because the odds of something strange happening go exponentially every time you have another animal.
Yes.
So
Yes.
when you were young as a farmhand, what did you learn about that immediacy? How did that actually play out in your day?
Oh, it was so frequent. Let me give you one example to make it real. And this happened often. It was a daily reality. Would come in different forms. So I was earning my way through college. I was working on my bachelor's degree. I was working on the farm, and this was summertime. It was in early July. It's the middle of wheat harvest, so we had a very good wheat crop that we had grown. It was about 60 bushels to the acre, which is a dryland yield. That's a very good yield. You're going to make pretty decent money off
All right,
that.
so hold on to help a poor urbanite from Pittsburgh out.
Yeah.
Please translate 60 bushels to an acre. What does that actually mean?
Well, you sow wheat and you're going to plant maybe 30 to 40 pounds, which is about half a bushel to an acre. And now
Okay.
you're going to grow that over the course of, you'll plant it in October, and then you'll graze cattle on it through the winter. And then in the spring, it starts to grow to make a head to create seed, wheat seed.
Okay.
And that's going to mature and ripen, and you're going to harvest that in late June, July. That's where we farmed in the Panhandle. Harvest time would be start about the middle of June and go. You'd hope to be done by July the 4th to get
Okay.
everything harvested. So when you're cutting that wheat, if your break even economically would be down around 10 or 11 bushels to the acre. If you could harvest that much, and a bushel is 60 pounds of hard red winter wheat, and
Okay.
that's what we were harvesting. So you go through with the combine, you cut the heads off, and then you grind out. You have a cylinder that grinds out the grain from the stalk and from the
Mm-hmm.
husk. You separate that, you gather that in a bin, and then you want if you can get 20, 30 bushels to the acre, that's a solid crop. Well, we were harvesting about 60 bushel to the acre. It's a very good
Outstanding.
crop. It was a bumper crop that year. Well, we were well into a couple of fields. We still had a lot of acres in the field. Up comes a thunderstorm. I see it off to the west. I could see it building. I'm on the combine and running the machine myself and loading the truck, and then we would take it off to the elevator to sell it. And you see this cloud build, and I'm watching it through the day, seeing what's going on. Well, that cloud came over around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. One of the worst hailstorms I've ever seen. It
Oh
was
no.
blinding. You couldn't see hardly your hand in front of your face, and from the rain, and the hail was so pelting that you had to take shelter. It would threaten your life. It was very strong. When that was done, we had several hundred acres that you couldn't even harvest.
They were
It had
crushed.
it had beat it to the ground. There was nothing left. So we lost about half of our annual income in one afternoon storm. Took about 2 to 3 hours that came
Oh
over.
my gosh.
That's what you face as a farmer. That you can work for an entire year, and in 2 hours, nature can take that away from you. It's gone. And
God,
that's reality. So
but
take
it is
that,
what,
take
right? It's
that
what
to your corporate environment. Yeah, try to explain that
it's
to
trying
the
to
board of
explain.
directors. That's what you can face. That's how the world really worked for thousands of years. That's what people faced.
Right.
It's a little different than. So
Yeah, well,
that's a good. That's an example.
it's a great example because A, you can't control it, but B,
Yep.
it's like you could say, gosh, if we had only like had 2 more hours or another half, I just needed one more day, right?
Yeah.
But the thing of it is, I I I think, I guess I'll ask. It's more of a question than a statement. At some point, you have to realize there's nothing you can do about it.
Oh
So,
yeah. Oh yeah.
why cry over spilled milk? There's
Yeah.
nothing to do.
Well, there's an entire category of risk mitigation and risk management practices that you use on the farm, and it does help.
Mm,
That's
mm-hmm.
what crop insurance is for. There's
Okay.
an entire discussion around that. Those are the realities, but those things basically drive your habits. They drive. You must account for them because they are going to happen. You do
Right.
not control them. You don't know when, you don't know where. You just know something's going to go wrong. So you could still talk about plant disease, animal disease, market uncertainty. So the market has uncertainty on top of the physical production uncertainty. So it's a world that shaped humanity for such a long time. It's like we've totally forgotten that.
Yeah.
In just the span of, let's talk about the Industrial Revolution. It basically started in 1760. In the course of 265 years, and before that, man is shaped by the tribal nomadic phase and then the agrarian phase. You face
Right.
risk all the time, risk of loss of limb and life, and the risk of nature every day for thousands and thousands of years, millennia. And then you come to 1760, that all starts to shift. In a mere 2 centuries,
Right.
we've forgotten. We've
Yeah.
forgotten.
Yeah.
So it's a major factor, major factor.
And I think what's interesting is that, as men too, we forget a lot of things that I think we don't want to forget, right? At our core,
Yes,
right?
yes,
You
yes,
talked earlier about stewardship. So I want to get
yeah,
back to that idea
yeah, yeah,
that, so I've never raised livestock. Just,
yeah,
just to be fair, I've never raised any livestock, but I
yeah.
can imagine that there is a connection and a sense of stewardship from the person
Yes.
to the animal. Even if you're raising
Oh yeah.
animal to be slaughtered for food, there is a stewardship where you really want to take care of that animal because you want it to have as good a life as it can because you understand it a little bit. You understand that this cow is different than that cow and that pig's different than this pig and stuff like that. But you also want to take care of that animal because your livelihood and your life depends on that animal being
Yes.
taken care of. Right?
Yes.
You need to take care of the land because your sense of, your whole economy, your whole lifestyle. And then if you get back to a primal place, Mark, the life of the tribe depends
Yes.
on taking care of the land, right? There has to be
Absolutely.
this, not just a take, but also a give. Like you said, it's a stewardship, it's a mutual caretaking.
Yes. Absolutely. Everything you said is absolutely correct, and I would distill it in a couple of thoughts as well. You have the physical nature of incentive, the raw economic incentive that if you don't take care of the resource, you won't get a return on it. Here's another thing you have, and I think this is what you're getting at, Chris. I want to make it explicit. The way you take care of that land and that animal reflects who you are. And
Hmm.
you see that every day. When you're looking at that animal and you take good care of it, you're thinking about something other than yourself. You're
Right.
thinking about something beyond that's outside of you. That makes you a better person. Here's some truth about the
Yes.
market economics. In market economics, and I'm an economist by trade, there's only one ethic that is inherent in a free market activity, and that is gain, the ethic of gain.
Hmm.
Consumers are going to move so as to maximize utility. Producers are going to move so as to maximize profit. And those things come together to create vast amounts of wealth. It's a very good thing. But we need more ethics in that. Well, where do those come from? They're not inherent, they come from us.
Hmm.
We bring them to the game. Those other ethics that we need, such as honesty, integrity. I'll do what I said I would do. You can depend on me. Reliability, hard work, work ethic. Those things are brought by the players. They're brought by the participants to the game, to the match. Well,
Sure.
when you forget about these fundamental basic incentives, your ethic base is going to erode. It's going to decay, and you won't be strong. I say it like this. I say to everyone, what's your foundation? What do you stand on? You need a guidepost. You need a bedrock. You need a North Star. You need something bigger than you. You need to think carefully about what that is. I've made my choices. I could tell you what it is, but everybody has to make the choice. And when
Yeah.
we try to not make that choice, those ethics are going to decay. You don't have a center and you forget who you are. The pressures of life take advantage of you, they eat you up.
And you know what also happens is that the pressures of daily life for the untrained mind or the fragile mind or the mind, like you said, that doesn't have a center and doesn't have a moral core will
Yes,
go to the thing that pleases them most or alleviates pain the quickest, which
there
may
you
not
go.
be the right or the best thing to do.
There you go.
One thing we've lost in losing the stewardship of the land, the one thing we've lost in the sense that people are so detached from the natural world and a farming world is a sense of teaching right and wrong throughout life, right?
Absolutely.
Um, I guarantee you there's not a single public school system that has a course on ethics. I guarantee
Okay.
you,
Yes,
or more, right?
yes,
Guarantee you there's no ethics or morals and things like that. And they don't teach
yeah,
that, right? So the
yeah.
question is, it gets taught by parents, it gets taught by community, but I think it gets harder to teach those lessons in environments that don't naturally teach the lesson. I would argue, and you can tell me because you lived it, I would argue that working in the natural world, working on a farm, working with animals, gives you the opportunity to work with other people who can then teach you these ethical lessons, and you live an
Absolutely.
ethical lesson working in the world.
That's absolutely correct. And I would say it like this, Chris. We forget the fact that there's a difference between principle and preference.
Ooh. All right, talk to me about that.
Those are two different things. And you need to understand the aspect of those and how to use them. When you start to lose ethics, you start to lose a center, a core. Everything becomes preference. Everything. And we don't want to talk about principle because that means I'm bound to something that I may not have a preference for. There are things, a serious person that is serious about life, they are people of principle. You're looking for bedrock. You're looking for things that were true before you got here and things that will be true after you're gone. They have an eternal nature to them. They're not whimsical, and those things are true. It's very simple. Do you like to be lied to? I could
No.
ask that question 1,000 times. Nobody likes it. And what's the follow on inference? If I don't like to be lied to, maybe I shouldn't lie to you,
Right.
right? That's a principle. That's not a preference. That's a principle. There are things that apply to every human in every place and every time. They're eternal. They're fixed. We need to understand those and apply them. Well, we reach a place where we want to treat everything as though it is a preference. That's why you don't hear ethics taught in the school because they might offend someone's preference or
Mm.
worse, their parents' preference because we think the entire world is made up of preference. Ain't so.
So
It's not so.
that is true. I think from time immemorial, we've talked about principle. I'm reading Marcus Aurelius, like the
Oh,
Roman
yes.
general,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
The
Great book.
Stoic philosopher
Yes.
Meditations, right?
Yes.
The OG, right? Um,
Fabulous book.
Talking about principles and talking
Yes.
about centers. So I've got a question for you, Mark.
Yeah.
When do you think? Because look, it's 2025. We know that things are kind of shifty, and especially men. I think, especially younger men, are having a real struggle trying to find these moral centers. When do you think we might have lost some of this? It could have happened maybe in the Industrial Revolution, but I don't know. I think it seems to have happened more aggressively over the last couple of generations.
No doubt. I would say the last 10 years, there's been a very aggressive push to abandon principle. The
Towards
entire world
preference.
is preference. That's where we become snowflakes. The only thing that matters are my feelings. I should never be offended. If I find something that's difficult, it's somebody else's fault. I'm going to blame them. I should not face difficulty. We think we're too good for it. We think we're, the truth is, life is just a series of problems that's coming your way. You need to be prepared for that. You need to build skills for that. That's the
Yeah.
way the Stoics viewed life. And they
Correct.
were 100% right. Life is a series of problems that's going to come your way. Are you going to prepare yourself and be ready for that? If you accept that, then you have a serious mind. You're an adult. You can
Yeah.
now be worked with.
Yeah.
If you don't, we tend to look at that and say, I'm too good for that. I'm above that. That's a hassle. I should not be subject to that. That offends my preference, and it's somebody's fault. Well, does that not define the modern world? I
Right,
shouldn't
right.
be
I should not
hassled.
be
It's too much for
inconvenienced.
me.
Right. I should. Right. I
Get
really
over
like your
yourself.
distinction
Get
between.
over yourself.
Yeah, I like your distinction between preference and principle. That's a really simple way
It's important.
and very strong words to describe those. I like that. And the one thing that I also want to touch on, like just what you said, where in the modern world, it's like this because of all the impressions that we have, the various, social media outlets that are out there, where preferences are things to be sought after versus principles that you said. What I really liked is you said that we have to be accountable to, because it's almost like accountability has become a bad word, where you shouldn't have to be accountable to anybody except how you actually feel. I think that that's actually has done a lot of damage, especially to young men, because as young men, right, as young men start moving into their adulthood, preference actually becomes less important, and principle becomes more important.
Absolutely.
Based on how you make decisions and the kind of person that you turn out to be. Yes.
That's 100% correct.
Yeah,
I would add to this, Chris, that when you talk about the timing when this happened, I think a lot of it is we just have not handled prosperity well. Mm-hmm. We've become an affluent nation, an affluent society, and we've forgotten what got us to where we are. We've forgotten the things that worked, that brought us this prosperity, and that would say basically post World War II.
Yeah.
So you come into the 50s, we were pretty solid because it's pretty fresh. The trauma of World War II was still very fresh. We knew that survival was imminent. Don't get stupid or it will cost you dearly. Well, you get further into that. The 60s we did not handle so well. Correct. 70s, okay. 80s were a little better. But our memory has faded, and prosperity, we've not handled it very well because we don't think those principles, the principles are actually what brought us into that place of prosperity. Holding to those deeply and tightly, that brought the United States to a place of prosperity. Well, somehow we think we don't need those anymore. I mean, how stupid can we be? I ask that question often, and I'm starting to stop asking it because the answer is yes. It could get worse.
Of course,
it can get much worse.
It can get much worse. There's an interesting book. I haven't read it, but I've read about it, and I'm intrigued by it. I forget the name of it, but her thesis is just what you talked about, where we are now in a land of plenty where you can order anything at any time and have instant gratification for a material product that you want right now. I can eat any kind of, most folks, even if you're living in an area that isn't close to a grocery store, you can still get food quickly, easily, right? Where when we were still developing, food was not always obvious. Food was not always a given. You don't know if you were going to eat that day, right?
Yes.
So what she was talking about was that there are these little dopamine hits that we get, where way back, we would have a dopamine hit of a great, deer, right? We got a deer. Great. We're all going to eat. That's a great dopamine hit. This is awesome. And then it kind of moves down where there's a homeostasis where our brain chemistry says, okay, you got this beautiful high from this deer that you guys ate. Now we're going to compensate. You're going to feel a little bit low, but that's fine because now you're at homeostasis. and you don't know when your deer's going to come. Like it could be 2 weeks from now, it could be 4 days from now, right? And in the meantime, you got to eat nuts and berries, right? That's what we're doing,
Yeah.
right? But now the dopamine hits happen all the time. All the time
Yes.
we're getting these things, and there's no stasis to where we can kind of calm ourselves down, which is maybe one of the reasons why depression is rising so much. It's doubled since 2015, accelerating since COVID. So I really like what you said, where prosperity and too much of a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing.
Well, I'll tell you what our saving grace could be, Chris, and that is in the middle of all of this prosperity and the laziness and ingratitude that we have responded to that with, the power of the mind. We can still think. We can think. So let's do this. Let's have a little exercise for your listeners here. Everybody take a piece of paper, and you can do it in your mind. Write down the things that you actually control. I mean, 100% control. You can guarantee an outcome. You can make a commitment, and it will absolutely be done. Make a list. It is a short list.
That's so funny.
It's
You
not
said
very
that. I was
long.
like, that is a short list.
Yeah, you and I can't guarantee we'll make it to bedtime tonight.
Right.
I could have an aneurysm. I don't even get up in the morning. We can't guarantee our next breath. And that is true at all times, in all places, regardless of economic status. We control virtually nothing. I would propose we control one thing: what I say and do right now.
Right.
I control that. And that's enough. That's all I need. That's all a steward needs, is to control that. We try to make ourselves a sovereign Lord, and we're not. We're stewards. That's what we're meant to be.
I love that word stewardship. I think that is coming around, and I think that you've learned that sense of stewardship, where stewardship to me implies, like we talked about, an inherent understanding of caretaking.
Yeah.
And that means not only for your children, that means for the land, that means for your relationships. And when it comes to the natural world, so I did a hike this morning with my son-in-law. There's a place called Mission Trails. It's kind of near our house. And what I love about these hikes is that you get in, and there are 3 million people here in San Diego, and there's like maybe 5 people on the trail. So it's like, it's crazy. To me, it's crazy. I don't know why this place is packed, but anyway, we're there, the sun's just cresting above the hill. The clouds are great, but the bird songs are incredible. Right. And what I love about these little moments is you have an appreciation for the beautiful complexity of the natural world. Right. Yes. You have the flowers that bloom that are brilliant and amazing, which attract bees, which are awesome and do incredible things to pollinate. And then, little, insects run around, and then the birds eat the insects, and the birds are running around, and they're, defecating and planting seeds and moving things around. It's all this beautiful, complex harmony of the natural world.
Yes, sir.
And so I think you acknowledge that too, right?
Oh yeah, completely and totally.
Doesn't it knock you out?
Oh, it does. Absolutely. It's amazing. Totally amazing. And I'll tell you, I think the demise in our salvation in modern society, we have gotten spoiled. We have not responded well to prosperity. But the problem is not the prosperity itself, and therein is the answer. The problem is we stop thinking. We stop thinking. Think deeply about life. Think deeply about what it means, what it is. That includes getting out of your apartment, getting out of your 4 walls, and taking a look at the world around you. It's an amazing place. We're going to space. We're not going to be bound to this earth. We're going to the stars. That's already happening around us. There is an unbounded amazement in this natural world. It's incredible. This planet is incredible. This solar system is incredible. The universe as a whole is amazing. We're going to see it. We're going to see all of it we can. So we've stopped using our most precious resource, our mind.
Right.
Think. And I would encourage you, keep reading Marcus Aurelius, keep reading the Stoics. Those guys were thinkers.
They were. What I appreciate about them, and what I appreciate about reading is that they think about how they think. right? Which is
Yes.
different, right?
It is. Yes, it is.
What am I thinking about this? Am I thinking about this well? Can I think better about this? And I
Yes.
think there's a wonderful man named David Patrick. I'm probably going to have him on my show. I went up to chat with this guy. He's brilliant. He invented a thing called the shark wheel. So if you Google shark wheel David Patrick, you'll see his invention. And really, it's a shape. He patented a shape that best articulates natural movement and put it into the shape of a wheel. So you and I, beetles, spiders, ducks, we all walk in an ambulatory way, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, right? Right leg, left leg, right leg. Beetles do with multiple legs. He said, but the wheel, it's flat. It's the most unnatural shape in the world. The bottom of it is completely flat. That's a wheel. It's unnatural. His wheel has a shape so that it's almost like you take a yin yang sign and you put it in 3 dimensions. So it's ambulatory. It's an ambulatory wheel. He said, but what he realized was that there are these patterns that show up within the natural world of energy that flows in different ways. And so there are different patterns that show up. That's why our nostrils have a curl. That's why we have a navel that go up to our nipples. That's why the crown of our head is bald in a man. If you cut open a pepper or a tomato and you look at it, it's the same shape, right? So there's this beautiful complexity of the natural world, but there's also this simplicity.
Yes.
Right. There's a simpleness behind it. And so I was reading some of your stuff, and I think for you have a deep connection between the natural world and your faith, and
Absolutely.
the idea that within all of this complexity, there is a simplicity. Can you describe that? I'd love to learn more about how you think about that.
I would say it like this, Chris. Let me expel a myth to begin with. There's a myth in the church world, the religious world, and anyone thinking about matters of faith that faith is inherently a sentiment. It's inherently a feeling. And the truth is, there are tons of sentiment that can accompany faith, particularly when you're in the practice of Christian habits such as prayer, worship, fellowship, study of scripture. Sentiment can overwhelm you. It can take you to your knees. It can put you on your face. It can be strong. But that's not the core of faith. That's not the center of it, the very heart of it. At its very heart, faith is a rational response to a rational question. Rationality leads you straight to faith. Because take all the things that you just discussed, and I love when you talk about the physiology and the connections in nature. I love that. I eat that stuff up. Cosmology is a hobby of mine. I love studying the universe and how things have developed and such. Rationality, all of those facts, and it's been true for every human that's ever walked on this earth. Take the Denisovans. Lived umpteen thousand years ago, long time ago. How could they have anything in common with our faith? Scripture wasn't even written then. Not a single word of it was penned. How can we relate to them, or how could they relate to us? It's this. All of the natural, rational, logical facts of living take you to a simple question. Who made that? How did that get here? Why does it even bother to exist? Why do we even have a universe? Why is it even in place? See, you have to understand, science is not a cause. Science is a tool. Science does not create. Science is a tool that we use to break down, to understand, to pull apart, to understand relationships and then manipulate and use those, but it doesn't create. It simply lets us understand. All of those facts take us to that simple question. How did it get here? What's first cause? Why does that even bother to exist? You look at that, you only have 2 answers. It's either a random accident, it just happened to pop up, or it was designed. It was made. Therefore, there is a designer. Now, we come to that point and we face that question and we have to choose. Some are going to say, no, it's random. I don't accept that there was a maker. It's a choice. Sure. At the very heart, the very core of faith, it is a rational choice. Faith is
I
a rational response to a rational question. That's what it is at its very core. So an atheist would like you to think that they know something you don't know. Absolutely not. We have the exact same information right in front of us. They say it's random, just happen to be. I say, you're kidding yourself. No way. No way. You want to tell me this universe is random? Maybe, but man, what an accident it is. Wow.
The greatest accident in the history of
Yeah.
everything.
You want me to you want me to bet my eternal future on that? Absolutely not. No way. No way. That's the difference in between. That's the
well,
difference right there. You're
it is.
standing facing that question. It is rationality at the core of it. The truth is, I'm a man of faith because it's the only thing that makes sense.
Sure, to
It's
you.
the only way. How did something come from nothing?
Right.
How does order come from chaos? How does life come from non-life? How did that happen?
How did that
Random?
happen?
Random? No way. No
Right.
way.
Well,
there's a maker. There's a designer. So
yeah, what I love about what you said, though, I think that's very powerful, because you connected two things that I found very interesting. Mark, first was the power of the mind to be able to choose what we think and say and do. That these
yes.
are the things in our control.
Yes.
Admittedly, if you have Alzheimer's or dementia and you're not in your right mind, okay,
that's
just take that away, right? But the idea is that you have a mind that you can choose, and you have a conscious choice of what you say, and you have a conscious choice of how you want to think about things. And then you said that faith is a choice, right? It's not necessarily a movement of the heart, right? So C.S. Lewis converted to Catholicism late in life. I don't know if you know the story or not about him.
Yes.
Yeah. So for the audience,
I've read many of his works. Actually.
Okay. So he's amazing. He's amazing. He's a thinker, right? So for the audience, his wife was an incurable cancer, and he committed himself to the Christian faith were she to live. And lo and behold, she lived. So he was like, this is now my choice. I'm committing now to the Catholic faith, right? This is the choice that I am making. And so it's interesting to me that you're able to, I think very artfully connect the understanding of the beauty of nature and its complexities and its miracle, right? It's true miracle. Yes. And if anyone is a parent, they understand there's a bewildering miracle that happens when your children are born.
Yes.
To this idea of choice and to this idea of faith, where for you, there's this designer in play. And it is interesting because Marcus Aurelius talks about that too. Aurelius calls it the logos, right? The celestial sphere, the animus, or whatever that is. Yes. And before Christianity, there were religions that were connected to nature. And the idea of these spirit animals, a connection of the forces of nature that drive and we are connected to. I don't know, Mark, if for thousands and hundreds of thousands of years we've been talking about connected, the mystical, not mystical, but the forces that are beyond us and wider than us, connected to the world. I don't know, right?
Yeah, I agree. There's an inherent knowing. There's an inherent knowing inside of us that there's more than this physical world that we see. The physical world itself is the first pillar of witness. There are two eternal columns of witness. One is physical creation itself. It takes you right to that line, right to that place. How did it get here? What started it? What's the first cause? And you have to answer that question. Now, God forces nobody to believe. Right. It's the choice that's put in front of us. So an atheist is looking at the same things I look at. And he says, no, it's random. I say, all right, man, I think you're a fool. That's your choice.
but that's your choice.
There's a second pillar of witness, the second one. It's the human soul within us. Just look at the calculation that goes on inside of every functioning person, as you just described a minute ago. We're made that way, and it's inherently moral. There's a moral code inside of us. So there are fundamental principles that do not vary. Who likes to be lied to? Who likes to be harmed?
Right.
Who likes to have their stuff taken? That's eternal. You take that Denisovan 150,000 years ago or whatever it was standing in his cave. He's looking at that other tribe over there thinking, you take my stuff, I'm going to clean your clock.
Right.
And he should also then think immediately, well, I don't want you stealing from me. I probably shouldn't steal from you. Well, what does that sound like? Thou shalt not commit murder.
Right. Well, and it
Thou
sounds
shalt
like
not commit adultery. It's the Ten Commandments. It's a moral code.
It's the moral
Ten
code.
Commandments were not top-down laws. They were a revelation of the blueprint of the soul. They were revealing how we're made.
So, and what I want to pause real quick, because you said something really interesting. You said it was the knowable. What was you just phrased it so well? It's like this unspoken knowable thing about us, right? This, and of course, this mystery of the soul. And one of the things that you think about is, is there this through line through the human species where we recognize another human out there, and then there's a choice of caretaking, but we know that the caretaking instinct is the right one, right? It's the correct one. You could call it a moral one. Now, the skeptic might say, well, that's the self-serving one, right? Because of course, if you take care of someone else, you're going to be served. But I think that there's something more. I think that
explain altruism. So the person that would say that,
right?
If you start from a blind, random universe, the only thing you're going to get is survival and the power to achieve it. That's it. Nothing else. There's nothing outside of that. So when we talk about love, faith, hope, joy, contentment, peace, nobility, honesty, integrity, all of that vast area of intangible things that feed the soul, how would we even know?
Right.
How would we know? You go from a starting point, a blind, random nothingness. The only thing that's going to come out of that is the need to survive and the power to do it. So the atheists, they stand in a tough place. They're going to have to, either they're going to be wrong and they're going to face this God that they said they don't believe in. That's the conversation's not going to go well. Or they have to accept the fact that evolution in all its forces over hundreds of thousands of years has chosen faith as a primary survival strategy. Good luck on doing that. Good luck on doing that. You can't. Now, here's where I would go with that. You're going to tell me that's random and blind? How would anybody know? It assumes there is an agent beforehand that understands those concepts and embeds them in nature itself.
We'll be right back. Well, so here's the thing. So you just said something that I love. It embeds them in nature itself. So one of the things that I appreciated with Marcus Aurelius's stuff is I read this one and I underlined it 2 or 3 times where he says, I should, do you want to just stay in bed because you're tired? Does the bee stay in bed? Does the spider stay in bed? Right? Yes. Does right?
Yeah. Back to fundamental things. Yeah.
The bee gets up and does his work, and he says, and what I love about it is the bee gets up and does its purpose to further the world. Yes. Right? And I thought that was so interesting because to me, is he imbued this purposefulness and this necessariness in an insect, in the smallest of creatures, right? Because they have a role to fill. They've got something to do. And that kind of leads to the idea that every person has a role to fill in the world, has a purpose in the world to do something in it, right? And so, and to your point about the survival instinct of faith, I never thought about that before, Mark, because the question is, where the faith is out there and if faith is not a mystery. Everyone has thought about it at some form or fashion. Whether you choose faith or not, you still think about it as humans.
Oh, yeah.
So is that imbued into everything in the natural world? Well, that could be, right? These are, of course, the mysteries that we don't know. But there is, I think it's very interesting you call it a survival instinct, because I think it's very hard if you are faithless, right? Even if you're maybe an atheist and you still have some kind of faith in the workings of the natural world, even if it's a randomness of it.
Yes.
But isn't that a faith in and of itself? Isn't that some type of belief?
Well, I tell you, Chris, atheists need to get honest. So they've been trying to be clever. So if you're truly an atheist, here's how the logic goes. There is no God. The universe is blind and random. There is no meaning and purpose. So just stop. If you're an atheist, you need to stop right there. Because if you then say, here's what many of them will say, well, I find meaning and purpose in life through this. Oh, do you now? You're just admitting that meaning and purpose exist. Here's the truth. Meaning and purpose exist before I got here, and they exist after I'm gone. We overstate the existential aspect of that. Meaning and purpose are not created when I choose them. I'm just taking part in it. I'm participating. When I take an act of love, I don't create love. Love was already here long before I got here. It will be here long after I'm gone.
Right.
So if you start from a blind, random world, there is no meaning and no purpose. There is no moral code, none. Only power. That's the only thing that's left. You cannot appeal to a moral code as in, don't harm me and I won't harm you. There's no such thing. There's just my strength versus yours. That's all that exists. Just power and survival, or survival and the power to achieve it. That's all you have. So atheists are not being honest. They're being clever. First of all, science does not prove their point. It just simply takes them to the choice that we all have to make. How did this get here?
Well, and what I love about being human is that power of mind and power of choice.
Yes.
I mentioned this on a couple of episodes.
Agency.
It's the human agency, right? Because a friend of mine who's on an earlier episode, he's going through cancer treatment right now. And he said that he has a choice every day. He wakes up to be positive, to be forward thinking, and to have a mindset of positivity. And like, it's the choice of happiness. And I was like, that's awesome. I love that you can, in your own mind, figure out how to choose that, and I think that, there's a lot of, we talked earlier about the rise of, depression and there are stresses in life. And you wrote a book about dealing with stress and the concept where there are tools available in our mind that, I think can help, because if you think about how you think, and if you, I don't know, Mark, take solace in the fact that there is a moral center out there, and take solace in the fact that these moral centers can help you make decisions that embolden you, empower you, give you agency, because even the idea of making your own decision is in fact empowering. And if that's true, don't you have then power over so many other aspects of your life? And isn't that hopeful? Well,
you're being a good steward, and that's very hopeful. That's the most hope we're going to get. You're never going to get absolute control. It's never going to happen.
Right.
We want to be sovereign lords. If you could pick a poem that defines the West, it's Henley, Invictus. I am the captain of my soul. We truly want to believe that. Well, back to our exercise, write down what you actually control. We're not meant to be sovereign lords, but we are meant to be good stewards. And there's tremendous power in that, tremendous satisfaction, tremendous gain in that. And I want to encourage you in something else, Chris, as you read Marcus Aurelius, notice through that book, he, as you said, he uses the word logos, or reason, or logic frequently. What he starts to do throughout is then say God.
That's exactly
right. He just says God. Yes,
exactly
he does.
Right.
He's starting to acknowledge it. And notice in two places, he also expresses admiration for the Christians. And he does it because they were stoic and resilient under persecution. He had admiration for that. I found that fascinating.
Well, and what I think, and historically, a lot of the Christian writing was informed by the Stoic writings, right?
Yes, absolutely.
There's a through line there,
Absolutely.
and what I think is so interesting, Mark, is especially as I get older. Now we've known each other for 51 minutes and 35 seconds, so you can.
That's right.
But I'm loving this conversation. This is fantastic, and I think you can tell. Probably, I tend to be optimistic, right? I
Yes,
have
you
more
are.
of a joyful countenance
Absolutely.
about me, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So with these type of ideas, facing the headwinds that we're facing now in 2025, and men facing headwinds that they've got, what gives you hope? What gives you optimism about ways that we can help other men just be better for themselves and be better stewards for other people?
Well, the one thing, Chris, that I would shout from the heavens as loud as I can, what is your foundation? What do you stand on? Think about it. It's really important because when life gets tough, and it will, whether you
Always.
like it or not, it's coming. That's what you're going to fall back on. So what is it? Everyone needs to answer that question. Think about it. I'll tell you what mine is. It's the God of the Hebrews, the God of the Scriptures. That is my foundation. That's my guidepost. I go right back to that. That's where I go to in times of trouble. Now, I would never force that on anyone, but I do ask the question very clearly, very loudly, very firmly. You must have a bedrock. You must have a foundation. The atheist would say, I'm my own reference point. Well, good luck. That's all I can say to that. Good luck.
Right.
I've found that to be inadequate. I'm flawed. I'm flawed. If I make myself the reference point, I simply circle back to my own flaws. I need something bigger than me, something larger than me. So I go to the God of the Scriptures. Now, everyone needs to answer that question. I would say that above all, and that's where hope comes from. Here's a truism I think that we need to hear. If you take out faith, if you take out God, you take out hope. If you take out hope, there will soon be no love. Correct. Those things come together. They travel together.
Hope is so powerful, right? There's this comic book called The Sandman. It's written by Neil Gaiman, and it personifies Dream as a character, and Dream goes around the world, right? He's Dream. He can do things, and he has his cousin's death, or his sister's death, and so it's a personification of these constructs and these ideas. And I'm a big comic book guy, and it's really cool. But there's this one passage in the comic book, and they did it as a Netflix series too. He goes down to hell, and he goes down to see Lucifer, and they play a game, and the stakes are pretty high. Right, on this game. Whenever you play Lucifer, the stakes are going to be high. So anyway, so they play this game where they become these things. And so she says, I am a snake, and I bite with my venom. And he says, I am an eagle, and I grab you with my claws. And then she says, I am the hunter, and I shoot you with my bow. He says, I am disease. And it goes back and forth and back and forth. And the stakes get higher and bigger, and he says, I am the earth, I am loving, I am full, I'm filled with green, and I'm replenishing. And she says, I am the comet that comes down and destroys you. And he says, I am the universe that's expansive and loving and full of planets. And she says, I am the black hole that eclipses it all. And he's and he drains, like his energy is draining, and he's almost done. And then Mark, he says, I am hope.
There you go.
I am hope. And I give something that might not be there, but I still believe in. And he wins. Because Lucifer, of course, hopes for heaven, right? In the story, right? But it's hope. Like it becomes the most powerful thing. And I love it how you equated hope and love, because it's funny. Like, there are very few things more powerful than hope and love, right? Yes. Because the hope gives the fundamental. The hope gives you the chance that I can do things for myself and for other people. And then love is what comes from not only because a lot of people are surprised by the love they feel after an act they do.
Yes, that's true. Yep.
Right. You do something and then you feel the love for that moment. Not,
Yeah.
not necessarily sometimes the love comes first, but sometimes it doesn't.
Yes. Yep. That's right. Yep.
I love
That's a
it.
fact. And I would ask this, Chris, on it. You're 100% right on faith, hope, and love, and the power of hope. And that's why depression starts to reign supreme. That's why we have mental problems. We've lost hope. Ask yourself, though, what is the ultimate hope? The death is not the end.
Right.
This life is temporal. The next life is the one that matters. That's the ultimate hope. And we live forever in that one. So, while we flail around down here and have all of our mental fits and our snowflake nonsense and all that goes on, God's standing right there saying, I'm right here. I haven't gone anywhere. I've never left. My word is the same. It's the same as it's always been. Would you just stop and believe? Because that's all you need. It's that simple.
Yeah.
You're standing that, all of rationality, all the facts take you up to that question. Where did this come from? You have a choice. The greatest hope in the world is just to say, I believe. I believe.
Interesting.
With that definition of faith, Chris, understand this. Think of the words of Christ. He said two things about faith. With that definition of faith, that rationality takes us to it, and faith is a rational response to a rational question, Christ said two things. He said, if you have faith as a child, well, just think of that child, that 6-7-year-old child walking outside at night, looking up at the stars and just saying, I believe. Very simple, very, very pure, very innocent, not complicated. He said another thing. He said, if you have faith as a mustard seed, something that's very small, not imposing, but it's a kernel. In that kernel is life. If you plant it, it grows. That's the kind of faith that is based in the rationality that says this life is complex. It's also, with that complexity, ordered, structured, has function, has purpose. I love the periodic table of elements. Just go look at that. That's the fabric of the universe. Tell me that's random.
Right.
I would challenge anybody to look at that. Tell me that's a random accident. It just happened to be. Oh yeah. Well, how's that? How did that happen?
Well, and
no way.
Right.
No way.
What's interesting too is that human beings physiologically crave homeostasis, like in the body, right? Right. Not too high, not too low, just the stasis point within the workings of our circulatory nervous system, muscular system, all this stuff, right? The question is, why wouldn't the world work like that, right? Why wouldn't the world work to find some kind of homeostasis too?
Yeah, because we're not in control. I'll tell you what the atheist is really saying. Many of them say, if God would do things the way I would do them, then I would believe in him. That's the clay saying to the potter, why did you make me thus?
That is hilarious.
That's what they're really saying. Yeah, I know it. Science doesn't prove it, but God doesn't behave the way I think he should, so I won't believe it.
Right. That's hilarious.
All right. Yeah.
Mark, well, this has been outstanding. I could talk to you all day about this stuff. This is so marvelous. So I have one final question I ask all my guests. So who is somebody that you know that I don't know that I should know?
Oh, well, I tell you what, unfortunately, he's passed on, but that would be my dad, my father.
Don Ray. Tell me about him.
What a wonderful man. He was, he meant so much to me. He was killed in a car wreck, February the 13th in 2010, unfortunately. He was 74 years old. But one of those tragic events that life brings your way. And that was very difficult for us. But he had a way of teaching about him that he took every opportunity. He raised 3 sons. He took every opportunity, and I was the middle one, to teach us the moral lessons, the principles of life. And what he would
Mm.
do, we farmed, and we grew up on that farm. It was his farm. We grew up on it with him. So he would take us with him. We'd go working together, and there would be interaction with neighbors or some business transaction in town or something on the farm. Something would happen. He would pull us to the side. He would say, "Now, boys, I want you to understand what took place here." We'd go through it, and then he would repeat a principle. And the top three were work hard, be honest, and be respectful. Those were the top three. And he would say things like, "Son, always tell the truth, no matter what it costs you. Son, always work hard. You will always have a job. Son, treat other people with respect, and you will always have good relationships and friends." He would repeat those things over and over. It's still
Mm.
ringing in my ears. I can hear it now. He
Right.
was my
The way
dear
you
friend,
said
my
it was
mentor.
the way you said it was the way he said it. I could
Yes.
see it in
Yes.
you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's so. I wish you would have known him. He was a tremendous man.
I would have loved to have met him, Mark. But that
He
goes
was
back,
Paul Harvey's farmer. It's like
right?
Paul Harvey wrote that that verse, that poem about my dad. He was just that.
That is so wonderful. It's so, I want to touch on that a little bit. It's just what we talked about earlier, where the moments of teaching, when kids go off to school all day,
Yeah.
kids come home, dad's at work, mom's at work, they come home, everyone does, they eat dinner, there's homework. There are opportunities for life lessons, but not in these moments, right? The fact that your dad, would be with you in a social situation or any kind of life situation and be like, okay, hey, son, you might not have been aware of this, but this is a teachable moment.
Yes. Yep.
And
That's
here's this
exactly what
teachable
would happen.
moment.
Yep. That's what would happen. I tell you what, Chris, we need to rediscover the notion of intentionality.
Yeah.
Being intentional. So yeah, and the modern world is busy. Schedules are different. You don't work with your kids on the farm anymore. You need to create those opportunities. Dinner
Yeah.
at home in the evening, et cetera, et cetera. Getting involved. I had another experience when I was going through graduate school, earning my doctorate. That was very difficult, very hard work. And I had two professors next to me. They were both my advisors. I had one, he left, and next one took over. Both of them were divorced while I was there with them. They divorced their wives of 30 something years and wound up with one with a trophy wife, both of them actually, with much younger wives. And the second one, I actually helped him move out of his house into an apartment. We were standing in the driveway, and I just asked him, I said, I'm a young man starting out. Tell me what went wrong. Why did your marriage fall apart? Why was that necessary? And he said, the most important thing is communication. So we just stopped talking. We stopped talking to each other. A particular event happened. They were both mad about it, and they just stopped communicating. He said, and that was 28 years ago. So we've had a 30-year marriage. We had 2 good years, and
Oh
and
my gosh.
that's what took place. So that deeply impressed me. It made a mark on me that I saw those guys, and I was just getting out of graduate school, just going into my banking career, and I realized I need to be careful, or that will be me. If I
Right.
don't pay attention, I'll be in the place they're in right now. So make your choices accordingly.
Yeah. You know
And
what? I
it
love that
affected me.
lesson, that lessons that you learned of paying attention. I
Yeah,
have to believe that your dad helped to teach you the lesson of paying
without a doubt.
attention.
He would tell me when I was a kid, he'd say, "Son, you can learn everything by yourself on your own, but if you'll learn by watching other people and listening to them, it'll be a lot easier life." He would impress that upon me. And I learned that, if you have to experience everything to learn it, it's a hard life, hard knocks. You'll learn a lot, but you'll learn a lot more if you'll pay attention to other people.
You learn
Listen
a
to
lot
them and
faster.
watch what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that all comes from intentionality. My dad was
yeah,
very intentional about teaching us. We need to be intentional about building hope, building faith, building
right.
love, building family, those intangible things. I would say it like this: build your life on the intangibles. And on the basis of those intangibles, seek the tangible. That's a better life. It's a better
I,
way to live.
I love that. That's a great way to sign off. I think we're going to have another conversation about stories with your dad and
Uh,
and lessons that you learned from him, being his son, because practicing sonhood for your father, and the kind of lessons that you're trying to pass on to your kids that you learned from him.
Yes, sir.
Because I imagine, Mark, I don't assume, but I would imagine that you also picked up that intentionality and tried to find teachable moments with your own children.
No doubt. No doubt. My dad would have been very disappointed if I hadn't. He showed me
Right.
how to do it, so I did the same with mine. Yes.
Wonderful. Well, you know what? Let's get in touch and schedule another time. I'd love to have that conversation with you.
Yes, sir. I agree.
Well, you've been marvelous. Thank you for spending time with me and sharing this great chat.
It's been great. You're a great host, Chris. You're a super host. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you. Have a great evening.
Take care, sir.
Well, okay, Mark Teague, or Dr. Mark Teague, or Mark. Wow, what a conversation. That went pretty deep. That went very strong. A man who's got convictions about how he believes and his faith that grounds him and creates a foundation for his life. What I also love is the idea of understanding and appreciating the complexity and the beauty, the mystery, the unfathomable interconnectedness of the natural world, right? The fact that a bee exists is incredible, right? That it pollinates, it flowers, it moves from one flower to the next, it helps flowers grow, and then insects and the birds and the connectedness underneath the ground with the trees and connected to animals and people. If you start thinking about it deeply, it becomes overwhelming, as big and broad as the universe. And so the question is, how do you bind that? How do you connect it? And how do you help that understanding of stewardship in your own life? Well, for Mark, there's a foundation of faith. So what did I learn from Mark? I learned to intentionally understand the difference between preference and principle. I learned to appreciate the simplicity of the power of faith. And he said, look, I'm not trying to convert you, but I've got a foundation in my life. And that foundation has meant everything in terms of me making my choices, my moral, my ethical choices. And even his dad dropped these, teachable moments that came from a foundation. So I guess I'll ask you, what's your foundation? What's your foundation? Well, I hope you enjoy this episode. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Visit menfolkjourneys.com and book a conversation, because I'd love to hear your story too. Thank you so much for listening. Word bid Falarid.